Hello, good evening, everyone. My colleague Monica and I, with the interpreters for this meeting, I'll also repeat this introduction in Spanish. The Zoom interpretation feature will be used in the Zoom meeting for English and Spanish support. All participants on this call must select the language of preference by clicking the language when the host turns on the interpretation feature. This is found in the world icon located on your feature panel. Interpretation for this meeting will be conducted simultaneously. Thank you for your attention and collaboration. Buenas noches a todos y bienvenidos. Mi colega Mónica y yo somos los intérpretes asignados para esta junta. Se utilizará la función de interpretación de Zoom para soporte en inglés y español. Todos los participantes de esta llamada deben seleccionar su idioma de preferencia haciendo clic en el idioma correspondiente cuando el anfitrión active la función de interpretación. Dicha función se encuentra en el panel de herramientas en el icono del globo terráqueo. El modo de interpretación para esta reunión será el simultáneo. Gracias por su atención y colaboración. Buenas noches.
Daniel, ¿me traes mi...? Shh. ¡Ey! Primero no...
All right, it looks like we have all board members. So we are reconvening to open session at 7:50. They're in closed session. We discussed the two items and no action was taken. We are now on to item 6, comments from the public. This portion of the agenda provides an opportunity for members of the public to directly address the governing board on any item of interest to the public. However, provisions of the Brown Act preclude any action being taken on any item not appearing on the posted agenda. Time limits allocated to public testimony are 3 minutes per person and 20 minutes per public comments. Speakers are asked to give their name and affiliation so that an accurate record is reflected in the minutes. So I just want to, so this time we will take public comments on non-agendized items. Just wanted to let you all know that the focus and bulk of tonight's meeting is the study session we're having on the LCAP and the COVID relief funds. So if there, again, any members who wish to speak on items not on the agenda, we'll take those comments now. As a reminder, we will not be discussing them. And if you have any questions or concerns that you would like to be addressed, since we can't be doing that tonight, I would invite you to attend the upcoming community forum with the district staff, which will be on May 4th at 5 p.m. We will also have virtual board office hours on Thursday, April 29th from 5 to 6. You can also send an email to the appropriate staff members or to the board, or you can also send to meetingcomments@sesd.org. Aaliyah, how many raised hands do we have?
Just jumped. We now have 11, 12.
All right.
It's growing.
Okay, well, so since we have more than we'll be able to get through anyway, so we will have 20 minutes for public comment right now. As a reminder, the bulk of tonight's meeting is for the study session on the LCAP and the COVID relief funds. So we ask people to try to make your comments as brief as possible so we can hear from as many of you as possible. And if when it's your turn, if someone has shared something that you agree with, you could just say, I agree with so-and-so, which will allow more people we'll be able to hear from more people tonight. And then again, we will go for 20 minutes. I think also, since there's more people, let's do the 2 minutes so we can hopefully hear from as many as possible. So we'll do 2 minutes for each person. And then when we get to the 20 minutes, we invite those who are not able to share, again, those several things that we talked about. There's the community forum coming up, the board office hours, and then you can always email as well.
And Aaliyah, can you read off the names of the people who will speak? Because so we're just going to list the ones that have their hands up now.
But it doesn't necessarily mean we'll be able to get through all of them.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll just go 20 minutes, 2 minutes each.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Leah, maybe just read out like 2 or 3 names ahead so people can be ready.
Okay. Go ahead. I'll go ahead and get started. Okay.
Thank you, Leah.
So first up is Yiftach Golan, then DEO, and then Wendy Smith. Yiftach, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. So first, hi guys, hi to the superintendent and to the other board members that I spoke with you before. I'll try to do it very brief. It was important for me to say first that I'm part of the 100 families group in the WhatsApp group, that we want to go back to school for a full in-person experience. I'll just make it quick. I just think, like, everybody's getting vaccinated. Kids are already going to school like 2.5 hours every day in Cherry Chase. And I honestly don't see any reason why we don't go back to school for a full 5 days in person. It's been done in many different counties, many different states, many different countries. I think that this is what we need to be focused on. And let's just do whatever we need to get back to normal. And let's not delay it for the kids, and just get back to school and focus on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have DEO, and then Wendy Smith, and then Colleen Lynch Espinoza.
I just wanted to agree with the previous speaker, and I'm sure some other speakers. Middle school started going back this week. From what I hear, it's been successful. I'd like to see an increase of it. We can add on maybe Wednesdays, half day in the morning for the A's and a half day in the afternoon for the B's, or something, or as the other gentleman said, let's go 5 days. Everything's improving. Other schools are back 5 days in the US. Governor wants kids back in school, I think a little more than just 2 days a week. So yeah, I think there's still time that we can do even more incremental stuff than for the rest of this year than what we've got, what we started this week. Thanks.
Thank you. And next up, we have Wendy Smith, and then Colleen Lynch Espinoza, and then Donald Pearson.
Hi, everyone. I'm here tonight speaking as Wendy Smith, the teacher at Cherry Chase School. And as teachers, we spend a lot of time with SEL skills in our classrooms. This week in my class, we have been focusing on the power of positivity. And since you guys haven't been able to really come out to our schools this year, I wanted to share some things with you from our students. We talked about overcoming adversity with positive attitude, and these are some thoughts, and I thought you would enjoy this as a positive thing tonight. When I am faced with a challenge, I know I can take a deep breath, ask for help, and face it with my teachers and principals' help. Some of my positive experiences is that I stay positive and think any way I do school can be fun. My parents taught me to make the best of hard things. This year, I've learned to breathe, take it all in, and then to breathe again. I like that one. I really liked many things about school this year. A few things I enjoyed were the assignments for asynchronous because they weren't too hard, but they weren't too easy either. The April digital journal was my favorite of all activities. When I started writing, I felt like I was recording my feelings about the year. The jokes and the activities we get to do after sharing is the best. I always ask the jokes to my parents, and if they give up, and when I reveal the answer, they laugh so much. I love school so much because I have extremely fun teachers. I like the bingo board because whenever we get a bingo, we can do so many fun activities like virtual field trips. We can go all around the world, joke day, dress up day, and many more. My favorite one is virtual lunch with the teacher. One thing I enjoyed this year at home at recess, you don't have to go outside when it's cold. And finally, a final thought.
30 seconds.
During this tough virtual school year, there are many, many negative thoughts, but also several positive ones. One positive thought is that we got to play many fun games. We played Where's Waldo, Build the Word Man. We told many jokes. Everything was as fun as if we were in the classroom. While many of us think bad about this year, it was still a pleasure to still be in virtual school. It's funny how children can have such big thoughts, and it's a great reminder how we can take something as adversarial as a pandemic and still get some positives from it. I'm going to be sending you guys some copies of things that the students have, and I just want to send you guys a positive.
Thank you, Wendy. Next up is Colleen Lynch Espinoza, then Donald Pearson, and then Ophir Mullah.
Hi, good evening, board and staff. My name is Colleen Lynch Espinoza, and I'm the instructional coach at San Miguel Elementary School. I formerly taught in the neighborhood program and as well as the Juntos program. And I'm here today to speak on behalf of our entire school, but specifically our Juntos teachers and our program. We are very proud and so blessed to have the Juntos program at our school. But as the only dual language site in our district, we have this constant sense of if we don't do it, who will? And we fill our plates for the students, for our mission, for our vision. And it's become very clear this year that it's coming at a very high cost. So I wanted to speak on behalf of our Juntos teachers today and bring up the hope and dream that someday the district will show the value of the Juntos program and the work that the Juntos teachers do by considering providing a BCLAD stipend for teachers actively using their BCLAD in the Sunnyvale School District, as well as investigating ways to attract substitute teachers who are Spanish speaking. We get very tired, but it's very hard to take a day off when you know your students are losing Spanish instruction, therefore impacting the immersion experience. We have extra meetings that are Juntos specific. Any district PD that is done, we usually have to have a follow-up. How are we going to apply this to Juntos specifically? Many times we have our own PD on top of all our other PD because
30 seconds.
Our program is different. And it's more than just teaching in Spanish. I will just end with saying we appreciate the resources, but we, as the only site in our district, and as it grows across the state and the nation, more resources are becoming available, but our teachers spend an incredible amount of time refining and finding the resources that will best meet their students' needs. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Next up, we have Donald Pearson and then Ophir. We have Ophir Mullah is up next, and then Karen Dazzles Albers.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for letting us speak. I would like to repeat again the same points that we are raising again and again, and yet still being ignored politely by the school district. Before that, I would like to remind the board the difference between a fact and an assumption. A fact is something that occurred. A usual test for statement is the fact is the verifiability, right? Something that can be proven. An assumption, on the other end, is a belief without a proof. On March 19, a month ago, before most of the grades didn't even enter to in-person learning, CDC released guidelines that enable 3 feet between students. This is a fact. The state, together with Santa Clara County experts, adopted these guidelines. This is a fact. The Sunnyvale district calendar was set based on 6 feet guidelines, cutting most of the grades to half. Models like AM, PM, and 2 days in school, like 2 days in virtual. This is also a fact. Principals offered models to increase the in-person hours with the new guideline and enable more in-person learning. These offers were rejected by the school district board. This is a fact. In SMS, located in the Silicon Valley, the center of technology in the world, 6th graders get only 8 hours in-person and virtual education session in a week. This is a fact. In the survey that parents signed on, the question was very clear. Would you send your kid to in-person learning based on CDC and county guidelines? There was no indication whether the distance between the students. This is a fact. Despite all of this, the school district begged parents, kids, teachers, principals to get more in person. When they asked why, they said they have some meetings on families that are not comfortable with 3 feet distance. This is an assumption that you made, and despite multiple mails and requests, you never gave us the number, no survey, nothing. Nothing was presented. This is a fact. I think I'll make an assumption. You make assumption that we will give up. We will not give up on our kids. You need to bring them back to school now. This is a promise.
Thank you very much. And then I see we lost Don Pearson, but he's back. So Don, if you want to go ahead.
Oh, thank you, board and district officials for listening to me. I wanted to come on today and thank both groups for the support that they've given to teachers this year and for the support they've given to students. Students have thrived in independent study. I have students who were doing very little when they were at school last year, but this year have completed 85 to 90% of all their work at a high level of proficiency. This is a big change from what they were doing at their school site last year. I think that the main reason for this is because they're able to work at their own pace and work with parents and teachers one-on-one. I spend an hour with each student each week, and this time is greatly used to build SEL and academic language. I just want to thank you both groups for all the support you've done. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up, we have Karen Dazzles-Albers and then Dana Abital.
Hello, my name is Karen Dazzles. I have been a neighborhood teacher at San Miguel for the past 5 years and teaching in the district for 15 years. I'd like to echo tonight the thoughts of my amazing instructional coach, Colleen Espinosa. I've had the privilege to work with incredible colleagues at San Miguel, and I've seen firsthand the modifications that they need to make to district curriculum, such as science and social studies, that is only provided to teachers in English. The extra time they spend to look for authentic and relative content in Spanish, the directions they write in 2 languages for their families, the emails back and forth around making sure that special assessments for Juntos classes are created, copied, and distributed properly, and the list goes on. As a kindergarten grade level team, my teammates and I work closely together to plan for all of our subjects. The resources that I have as a neighborhood teacher, readily accessible and available to me, far outnumbers the resources found in Spanish. A good example is the district English language arts curriculum of the Fountains and Pinal classroom, the literature set, shared readers, the guided reading books, the mini lessons, all of these amazing tools that I have at my fingertips for instruction for our earliest learners, unfortunately, is not available or adopted by the district in Spanish. As a team, we work cohesively to cover our grade level standards, and I see my colleagues spending extra time filling in for resources that I already have. My colleagues in all grade levels have a unique and invaluable expertise that should be rewarded. The Juntos program draws students from all of the elementary
30
schools in the
seconds.
district and provides an amazing opportunity of biliteracy and bilingualism for the Sunnyvale community. Our Juntos teachers at San Miguel deserve the utmost recognition for their services. So thank you for your time, and go Juntos Sharks.
Thank you. Next up, we have Dana Avital and then Anat.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Dana, and I wanted to thank you for conducting this meeting and letting us all to voice our opinion. I've been listening to the past meetings and hearing about safety, protocols, capacity, and a lot of important subjects, but I didn't get a feeling that the interests of my kids is first priority and this board is advocating for them. I have great respect for my kids' teachers, the school principals, but see a lack of leadership to guide us through this crisis. I have two boys, a 5th grader in Cumberland, a 7th grader in SMS, and a girl next year starting kinder. Both have returned to this hybrid model, 5th grader learning 2.5 hours a day, 7th grader learning 2 full days a week in a Zoom in the room model. Both returning home with a smile. I can't even describe for you what it means for a parent after more than a year, and I'm sure a lot of you as parents, as teachers are feeling the same way. I want to thank you for starting this change, but I want to say that it seems too little and too late. And I have two questions to the board. My 7th grader is describing classes of 3 to 8 students, a little more when it comes to PR and elective. And I'm hearing same numbers from other parents. We know that high school returned to 4 days a week, not to mention the 5th day that somehow became an independent work. Given these numbers and the 3-fit guidelines and vaccinations and teacher and staff getting these vaccines, I believe it will be appropriate at least to return to 4 days a week, and like the district neighbors and the other schools, and not in a month, next week. My second question, I'm exploring private schools like a lot of other parents. I'm hearing Dr. Gallinger saying that we're going to fully reopen in the fall, and I wonder if we can't manage these situations with the little numbers for 4 days a week, how are we going to open fully in the fall? That's a big concern I have.
Time is up. Thank you. Next, we have Anat and then Jill Borges.
Thank you. Well, at this point in time, we all just really look at other districts and we wonder, why are we so different? How come a few blocks away, districts were able to adapt to the new guidelines and overcome MOUs, being able to do 2 things at once, such as planning for spring and fall, being able to bring back any family that wants to go back to in-person. What are the special circumstances here that don't allow it? In recent meetings, you said that one of the main reasons for not reopening is a general consensus of the community to keep things as is. And I keep thinking about this statement because the many families that I talk to feel quite the opposite. They are very pro reopening and increasing instructional hours as much as possible immediately. In fact, many virtual families feel that the hybrid plan is for the privileged families who have the ability and the option to drive the kids back and forth midday. So I keep wondering, what is this consensus statement based on? As others said before me here, the opening is successful so far, and there's absolutely no legitimate reason to not expand it to full-time immediately.
Thank you. Next up, we have Jill Borges and then Paul Bloomer.
Hi, my name's Jill Borges. I have a 7th grader at at SMS, sorry, and a 4th and 1st grader at Cumberland. So first, I wanted to say that I fully agree with what Dana said earlier. And I appreciate that you guys have taken the time to open in the hybrid so that my kids can have an opportunity to attend school in some capacity. I want them to go to school 5 days a week full-time. And I'm also a teacher in the Fremont Union High School District. And I disagree with a lot of my colleagues for their reasoning for staying home, because I think that the detriment that it's doing to our kids is far more, it's just horrible, the things that I've seen with my own children versus the risk that there is for teachers. And specifically for 7th and 8th grade, my daughter, who has ADHD and a 504 plan, has had the last 2 days of school, Monday and Tuesday, were the best days of her entire year. I picked her up from school and she was happy and she did all of her work for the first time the entire year. She hasn't done all of her work the whole year until Monday. Also, from the teacher standpoint, I have my high school I teach PE, so I have 40 plus kids per class, and I have classes of 2, 4, 8, 8, and 14. And my class of 14 is because I have so many kids with IEPs in that class and they all need to be on campus. But I want to say specifically that I know more about those kids that have come to school for the past 2 days. I know more about them, their needs, their desires, the things that they want to do, their hobbies, the things that are important to them. I know more about them in the 2 days that I had them than I've known about them the entire 3/4 of the year. Okay. The teacher should stop pretending that Zoom is school, because it is not. And I've worked hard to change my curriculum, but it still does not meet what real school is.
Thank you. Your time is up. Thank you. Next up, we have Paul Bloomer and then Ella Barak.
Hi, my name is Paul Bloomer, and just like the person before me, I am a physical education teacher, and I teach at both Vargas and San Miguel. And I'm here to show my appreciation for the San Miguel teachers, specifically the Juntos teachers who teach in both English and Spanish. And I'm one of the lucky teachers who is able to actually see different teachers actually teaching, because I have to pop into their Zoom rooms while I do physical education. So I get to see the tail end of lessons. And, if they're teaching math or language arts, science, social studies, I get to see the end of it. And one thing that's very apparent for all the teachers who I come into contact with is they are working their tails off, and so are the students. And one thing about the Juntos teachers is when I come into their classroom, I can see they're working hard, but I don't speak Spanish and they're teaching in Spanish. So they have to switch not only from math, they have to transition from math or whatever it is they're teaching to physical education, but they also have the students transition from Spanish to English. And that's just one more thing added on to their plates. And I was thinking, what else is added on to Juntos teachers' plate? And it's things like they have extra grading on report cards, they have to do extra translations. As Colleen and Karen before had said, there's fewer resources in Spanish. So it just takes more time and energy to find supplemental resources, and that includes professional development. And also, as a bilingual teacher at San Miguel, a BCLAD authorization, a bilingual authorization is required. And I figure, you know what? If it's required, it should be shown that it's required through an appreciation. And, we love to give props with our voice. We love to give props in other ways, but also a stipend would be a great way to show appreciation. But really, those teachers are amazing. All the teachers I've worked with at Vargas and San Miguel are just on point. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And then next up, we have Ella Barak and then Grace Chiarella.
That was the 11th speaker. Are we at, there were
Well,
two.
I was gonna say we're right at 20 minutes. Let's take the last, one more speaker, and then, because we're right at about 20 minutes.
Okay, Ella Barak.
Speaker, and then just a reminder for anyone else, we have the upcoming, I'm gonna go back to the dates. Where is it? So the April 29th from 5 to 6 is the board office hours. May 4th will be a community forum with district staff. And then again, if you have specific questions or concerns, you can reach out to appropriate staff members or send emails to the board, or also to the meeting comments at scSD.org. All right, Elise, you help us with the last comment. Thank you.
Yes, go ahead, Ella.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for letting me speak. I want to talk to you as the other parents about going back to school. My son is in 8th grade in SMS, and I have 2 daughters in Cumberland, 5th grade and 2nd grade. My son went to school today for the first day in more than a year. It was a great day for him, and he came back happy. Although he said it's hard to focus studying when they actually had to focus studying when he couldn't go to his other computer or phone and do other stuff. And then that brings me back to the point that the other teachers spoke before me and said, not before me, but a few people before me, and said some of the kids are thriving in Zoom. And I know my son, and I know the teacher he had in Zoom were great teachers, there still are, but they said in his IEP meeting that he did great job this year, but they didn't see the hardship and everything that went in our house when he was on Zoom, some of it when he was on Zoom, some when he wasn't, because they only saw a square in Zoom. They didn't see my child. And that's a big, big difference. And I think that after talking to him today and seeing him today, coming back,
30 seconds.
Doing his work like he should, and only have 7 to 10 kids in his class, there is no reason for him not to come back 4 days a week, full days. And that's the same thing for our elementary kids. They also need to come full days. And there is no excuse for not sending them to a full day in person. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aaliyah, for your help, and thank you for those, excuse me, for those who spoke and shared with us. We are now on to items 7, the study sessions, and we're starting with the local control accountability plan. And I think I'm turning it over to Mala first. Is that correct?
Dr. Gallagher. I will follow Dr. Gallagher.
Okay.
Okay, but you have the presentation, right?
Jeremy is going to be presenting.
Oh, Jeremy's driving. Okay, great. So if you can put that up
He's
there.
our driver.
Okay, so what we want to do tonight is give a little bit of an update on where we are in the progress towards developing the local control accountability plan. As Ms. Ahuja will explain, this is a new one. Typically, LCAPs run for a cycle of 3 years. There was a pause last year because of the pandemic, and we had a sort of an interim document, but we are developing a whole new LCAP now. The board asked us to provide for you an update on the sort of the feedback that we've been getting so far to date. And so we're going to do that. We're also going to present the draft goals. But actually, I should say, you know, we've talked about the focus areas or the lenses that we want the whole LCAP to be viewed through. So that's first. And then we're going to talk about a little bit about the draft goals and reference briefly the actions which will are still being developed. So we're right in the middle of the process right now. And I can tell you, staff met with our consultant from the County Office of Education who guides us through this process. So we had a really good meeting today. There's a lot of detail to this particular document, and I particularly want to thank Mala, Ms. Ahuja, and her team, because they're drilling down, and there's it's difficult to explain how precise the language has to be for every one of the goals, every one of the actions, and the accountability for each of those as we go through. So this isn't the meeting, public and board, this isn't the meeting where we approve the LCAP at all. We're still developing it. It's really just a check-in point, and we've never done this before. I think it's probably a good idea, and I would suggest that after this, we get some feedback and talk about, like, if we were to do this again in the future, what elements you would want to include in this intermediary meeting. So that's my introduction. What's the second slide? I think that may be the lenses.
Yes, it's the lenses.
Yeah, the 3 lenses. So that's good. So at one point we talked about these could be the goals, and then we realized like, well, no, these can't be the goals because goals has a very specific meaning in LCAP language. So, but these are the 3 lenses that we want to view everything through, and they are equity, and board, you've taken that on as a very important principle, through the pandemic and even developing before that. The concept of multi-tier systems of support, improving effectiveness of instruction and supports for individual students to really individualize that support. And then finally, recovery, renewal, and reimagining school. So we're looking through those 3 lenses. Just as a sideline, when I'm meeting with principals, all the people that I supervise, I ask them to look through these 3 lenses as well. So there's really developing nice alignment in our real focus areas. So with that, I'm going to hand it back to Ms. Ahuja.
Thank you. Okay, so I'll just follow up on what Dr. Gada started, just to give you a little more information. So the LCAP is a 3-year plan, and it describes goals, actions, and services in addition to expenditures to support positive student outcomes and also to address state and local priorities. So the LCAP provides an opportunity for us to share how, what, and why programs and services are selected to meet our specific needs. It's exciting that this is the start of a 3-year plan. So we really took a deeper look at what we had in place, had conversations amongst ourselves, with our principals, with our community groups at the different sites to get stakeholder feedback, and then developed our draft goals that we're going to be sharing with you. The actions and goals you're going to be hearing about are twofold. So they either address needs of all students broadly, or specific target groups. The target groups that must be served in this plan include students that come from low socioeconomic status backgrounds, English learners, foster and homeless youth. So this is our must do. We have to address specific targeted needs for these students. And these, there are 3 types of goals, as you can see on the slide. And as we go through our 5 goals that we have crafted, we're going to share what they indicate. So one broadly is a maintenance goal that's really broad, that covers things that are associated with Williams-like issues: the infrastructure, school facilities, access to instructional materials being equitable across all sites, and also, just the hiring of highly qualified staff. So that would broadly be a maintenance goal. The other one is a broad goal, which is, as you'll see in the description, it really is broad. It covers a multitude of areas, which we will then focus more on through our actions. And the last one will be almost the most direct and easiest to understand because it's a focus goal. It's very, very targeted. And I will say more about that when we come to our goal number 5, which is our one focus goal in this current LCAP. Next, please. So these, if you can see them, are the 8 state priorities that need to be addressed in the LCAP. I just want to restate that our LCAP does not encapsulate everything we do, but it does shine a light on our focus areas. And then we have the specific targeted groups that we have to spell out the actions and services that we're going to be providing and the reason why, like why we've chosen to do what we do, and what impact it's having and what the associated expenditures are. I also want to add over here that the local control funding formula, the LCFF, really applies more to districts that get targeted funds based on attendance and their student population. But even with us as a community funded district, we are required to set aside and spend a certain amount of our funds on these targeted student groups. So we can go to the next one, and then I will turn it over to you after this, Mr. Nishihara. So the stakeholder summary. Now, these are very broad highlights. We have pages of notes that we've collected from the different stakeholder groups that we've conversed with. And we will see impacts of what the stakeholders shared at these community forums more in the school plans. But over here, you've seen some overarching feedback that has been provided. And, they really have, we've, taken out some pieces that we thought were really important to share. The first one talks about the process for parent and guardian feedback. If we can broaden that to include not just electronic or things that go via school messenger, but using things like WhatsApp. For any of us who have friends or relatives in different countries, we're all familiar with this app, which is a Google app. I know it's on a phone. You can make calls, you can get messages, and it's widely used. So anyway, that was specifically called out by more than one of our parent groups. The other one was about communication provided to parents and guardians in languages other than Spanish would help broaden stakeholder outreach. That's a suggestion. We can definitely look into that. There are always resources and human and fiscal that are involved, included in things. So our ask for at the state level is if we have over 15% of a certain language spoken in a school or district, then we are required to provide the translation, and we do in Spanish. But this is something that came up at more than one school. And then the other one was that the LCAP goals drafted for next year should provide opportunities to address issues of equity and learning gaps. I think that's something you will see a trend of as we're speaking about our goals and actions. And then a request for some increase in parent education regarding school governance. Parents want to know how can they be involved in a positive way. So we do have school site council, we have ELACs at the school site, but they want more information on how they could help with school governance. So those were some of the broader requests. There are many other specific pieces of feedback that we've incorporated into our actions, and they will surface as we address our different goals and associated actions. And with that, we're going to start with goal 1. And I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Nishihara.
Thank you, Mala. So goal 1, and if you could bear with me, I'll read it. Again, it's just probably helpful for our audience members as well. Ensure all students have access to equitable conditions of learning by providing and investing in highly qualified staff, well-maintained facilities and equipment, as well as robust standards-aligned instructional materials and resources. So to tie in the framework that Mala was just talking about, this is a maintenance goal. Another way to think of a maintenance goal are ongoing actions that are normally what the district is doing, but we would tie track performance and metrics to them. In addition, if you recall from the California 8 state priorities, this goal 1 falls squarely on number 1, basic service, which is the rate of teacher misassignments, access to standards, aligned materials, and facilities in good repair. So some examples of some actions that will fall under this goal are providing highly qualified teachers for the classroom, instructional materials and adopting updated materials, ensuring equitable access for technology. We took big steps with that this year. Pairing with that, and again, since we've been presenting for a couple of years on technology, digital citizenship, which goes hand in hand with the tech tool. Evaluation and staff hiring is something that that's embedded in this goal as well. Staff diversity, increasing staff diversity, district facilities, maintaining in good repair. And I think that those are kind of our sub actions that fall under this. And I know some of the questions that you're asking are metrics on how we measure these. So I'll just touch on a couple of examples. Our quarterly Williams report, where we need to report on our state of our facilities, teacher misassignments, and instruction material availability is just one metric that we will be rolling into this maintenance goal. In addition, the California teacher credentialing system is now talking directly with CalPads. So we are now audited annually on even teacher misassignments and credentialing of our classes. And so that's just another kind of metrics that's going, that we could tie into this to make sure that we're in compliance and moving forward in those goals. I think that's kind of all I was prepared to say kind of at this level on that. And I believe we're gonna maybe cover all five, Michelle, President Maginot, or do you want to take questions on each goal?
I hadn't really thought through that. Let's maybe go through everything and then, or should we do each goal?
May I recommend?
Yes, Mala, what do you recommend?
I was going to recommend we go through them all because it might give us an overarching picture, and then we can come back to any goal that you have questions about.
That sounds great.
And yeah, thank you, Mala. And I was going to say the same thing because some of the actual they're related as well. So I think this is a great way to approach it. So,
okay, so we'll go through and then we'll come back and touch on each goal and have time for that. Yeah, great.
Fantastic. I appreciate that. So next, I'm going to hand it back to Mala for goal 2.
Yes. Okay, perfect. So I will do the same and read out goal number 2, which is to provide high quality, equitable, and responsive instruction for all students to prepare them for college and/or career readiness. I'm going to request Jeremy if you could go back to the state priorities slide as we talk about this goal, because that might be helpful. Because this particular goal is a broad goal, like I mentioned in the beginning, as one of the 3 types of goals. And as you can see on the slide, this particular one addresses the implementation of state standards, the academic content, as well as the performance standards. It also addresses pupil engagement, more of pupil achievement, some engagement, which we know are connected, but looking at standardized test scores, proficiency, reclassification rates, and evidence of college and career readiness. So we took the language kind of directly from one of the state priorities. It also definitely addresses priority number 8, which is other pupil outcomes in courses of study. So number 7 talks about course access, which is also, you can see these priorities are so embedded in the different goals, and that those are things that we absolutely have to include. It's part of the ask of how we're putting this plan together. So I'll broadly talk about the actions in goal 2, which is a broad goal. It's designed primarily, thank you so much. It's designed primarily to narrow the opportunity gap by providing tiered support, and those who need more get more. So part of the actions in this plan include our instructional coaches, coaching for equitable outcomes, the addition of a support teacher for equitable outcomes that we are adding to provide that additional support, again, for those who need more, getting more, direct services, as well as coaching for the teachers. We talk about leveraging our teacher leadership teams. One of the things we're so proud of in Sunnyvale is the distributed leadership model we have. And we have, over 100 teachers that participate in different content and grade level specific leadership teams. So really looking at their work and the impact that's having, back at the school site in every classroom for our students. Then we're honing a light on our vision of having every child be a reader by 2nd grade, and having a focus for professional development on foundational literacy, along with the notion of, under the MTSS Tier 1 umbrella, of really providing professional development for great first teaching. Because what happens in the classroom, the first round of teaching, that's the most important piece that we can leverage and do more with. So the PD that goes with that. Math is a really critical piece of the work we're going to be engaging in, and having some formative math assessments and math instruction is part of this goal. Promoting STEM programming, because we want to make sure we include the things that we're already doing. Some of them are typing club, hour of code, expanding coding opportunities, just expanding our STEM-based programming. And then last but not least, revising the middle school schedules that you already had a glimpse of to reflect our commitment to equitable access for English learner students for the electives at SMS, and the Juntos cohort that's going to be starting at CMS next year. So those are some of the actions that fall under this umbrella of goal number 2 for academic achievement. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tasha for goal number 3.
Good evening, board. Are you able to hear me okay? Great. I've been having technical difficulties all day, so that's great. So this is a goal that I think is near and dear to all of your hearts, actually, and our entire district and the work that we're doing. And so I'm just going to reiterate the goal here. Ensure school and classroom environments provide social, emotionally, and culturally responsive teaching for the whole child so that students can reach their full academic potential. So Mala spent a lot of time talking about the academics and some of the scaffolding and interventions that we're going to be doing. But we also know just in general times that students have some additional needs that they come to us with. And so a part of this goal is to address that. But the other part of the goal is to address the cultural needs that students have in what we teach, how we teach it, and how they're able to access the learning. So we talked a little bit about goals being broad. This is a broad goal, but there will be various focused areas throughout this particular goal. I'll highlight a few of the areas here, going back to those 8 areas that we're supposed to focus in on. This particular goal will capture area 3, which is regarding parent involvement, pupil engagement, and then school climate with some specific metrics that actually go in those particular areas. So at this time, based upon feedback, this is feedback from some of the work Mala talked about. This is feedback from teachers. This is feedback from surveys of different types that we've had throughout this year, and a multitude of other ways that the feedback is coming in. It will include targeted training. Some of that targeted training will be around culturally responsive teaching. It will include socio-emotional learning. And this is not just for staff. It'll come up again later when we get to our next goal, but it'll be for our students and our families as well. In addition to that, we will be providing workshops around trauma-informed care, as well as being trauma competent in our teaching and our practices. It will emphasize the coaching work by our coaches around socio-emotional and equity in our classrooms around our campuses. We will continue to do surveys. We will continue at this time with Panorama, but based upon some of the feedback, we will look at some other ways to do that. It's trying to get a balance between capturing all the voices, but also being sure that we don't overwhelm and survey our families and community to death, if you will. So it's a balance between that. The other areas that we will be emphasizing will be around restorative practices, building on the work that has been started over the last 2 to 3 years, and just becoming more proficient at that work across our campuses. One of the other areas based upon feedback that we've been given by our staff and parents too, is just kind of how to get all this information in one place and make it as easy as possible for our families and our staff to access. So one of the things we'll be looking at is either a district portal or something like that, where all the information can be housed so that everyone will know where that the majority of the staple materials and resources are and be able to access those as they need to. So that'll be something we'll be looking at. Doing more work around our MTSS teams. You've heard us talk a lot about MTSS. So working to align those teams, strengthen those teams, working more closely with Mala around some of the interventions, especially at the tier 1 and 2, which are our big bang, as Mala talked about. You know, that's where we get the most for the work we're doing, because we get to catch it early, intervene early, and then students hopefully can thrive from there, being the goal. And then continuing some of the work that we've done, and we will continue around community partnerships. You know, as a school district, we do a lot of things, but at the end of the day, sometimes there's just things students need that we don't offer, or we may not have the expertise then. So it's looking to the community partnerships to fill in the gaps where we may not have the expertise or that resource available directly within the district. So we'll talk more, but those are some of the highlights of where we will focus in order to meet the goals that are the actions, I would say, embedded in this particular goal. And so with that, I will transition to Ms. Wilson.
Thank you, Dr. Dean. So there's a lot of crossover here, but a lot of supporting activity ideas here. So goal 4 is to foster a welcoming and inclusive environment for all parents, families, and community stakeholders as partners in the education and support of all students' success in school. And these also tie back to the state priority areas of the parent involvement, school climate, and hopefully with the outcome of pupil achievement. And this, of course, ties back to, as you guys know, just research and Sunnyvale's own school survey data just that supports parent involvement and engagement is associated with student academic performance and their social competence. So this, of course, is something that's really important, particularly after this past year, which has been really difficult. We want to make sure that it's just more critical that we provide targeted supports for our families to keep them engaged and just to keep them supported as our partners in educating their children. Tasha mentioned some of the shared activity items, but some of the other activities under this goal would also include, she mentioned family education, not only at the district level, but having each school site actually have a plan for parent education that are specific to their individual school site's needs. She mentioned family partnerships and community partnerships. So things like the Family Engagement Institute, who we partner with for Stretch to Kindergarten and trying to catch early education opportunities. We've transitioned our annual Stakeholder Lyceum to now be called the Equity Summit this year, but continuing that going forward so that we can dig deeper into the work that we're doing there. We also have under this goal is engaging families through relevant communication channels. Ms. Ahuja spoke to, languages being important, but also just what parents use. WhatsApp, exploring that to email or even in-person visits, just making sure that we have the most up-to-date parent preferences in that regard. And then family representation, making sure that our school site councils and ELAC and DLAC are more reflective of the student body. So looking into ways that we can make sure we're recruiting more diverse families so that we can get more representation. And then of course, Dr. Dean mentioned just really making sure we're providing the resources around social emotional learning, culturally responsive teaching, and just equity resources that are easily available for them to find and support them in their at-home efforts. So those were the main areas for that. And with that, I think I will pass it back to Ms. Ahuja.
You're muted, Mala.
Thank you. Yes. And last but not least, our focus goal is to accelerate learning outcomes for English language learners as measured by local benchmark and state assessments, as well as an increase in the district reclassification rate. So I'll just speak a little bit about the focus goal and the goal description. So the description provided for a focus goal has to be specific, measurable, and time-bound. This is intended to address areas of need that require a very specific and data-intensive approach. And as we know, we can't focus on a whole lot of things at once. So we've chosen, based on data, local and state data that are English learners, really targeting their needs and resources and support is a valuable focus target for next year. And the local measures that we have looked at, are benchmark assessments in ELA, in math, as well as the dashboard, which has been a couple of years, the state dashboard, but really looking at the opportunity gap, the academic achievement gap is pretty huge. So within the English learner population, we also know that not all English learners have the same level of need. So we've gone a little deeper to say we've identified the two major focus groups within this group, being newcomers and students that are either at risk of or have already become long-term English learners. So the state identifies students that have been English learners for 5 years or more as being LTELs or long-term English learners. So our goal is to look at students by the time they're just entering, exiting third grade, entering fourth grade. So we've had them for about 4 years, and looking at those who are at risk of becoming long-term English learners and seeing what we can do to prevent that from happening. But even more so, I think if you tie it back to goal 2 and our focus on early intervention and early literacy and early numeracy supports, really providing those supports and scaffolds before they reach this stage. So that's why all these goals and actions are so interconnected. It's hard to isolate them, but we have, put this as a separate area of focus for the reasons I mentioned. So I'm going to encapsulate some of the actions of this goal, and they include best practices in teaching. So the designated ELD, which is language instruction, and integrated ELD, which is teaching English through the content throughout the day, professional development for teachers, of course, the support we provide and we'll continue to provide through our bilingual paraprofessionals who provide the tiered MTSS academic support for the students, and then the community support that we provide through our bilingual outreach liaisons who support the MTSS tiers for attendance, as well as for family engagement. So these are just some of the actions that we have considered that would be embedded in accomplishing this goal of ours to accelerate learning outcomes for English language learners across all our schools. And I do want to add here that within, 2 weeks, the May meeting that we do have a presentation that is targeted and focused on English learners, and that would really tie this LCAP goal very well together with much more data. And a very talented Ms. Valentine is going to be sharing that presentation and those details with you at the May board meeting. Dr. Gallagher, would you like to wrap up with this timeline?
Yes. So you can see we're at April 22nd here with the board preview. The law requires that there be a public hearing. You're used to this because we do this every year on the update to the LCAP, that there be a public hearing before the adoption of the LCAP, and the LCAP is adopted at the same meeting as the district budget. So those are the next two steps in the process for the board. There's still a lot of work for staff to do to develop the LCAP, and that's why Ms. Ahuja is smiling, because what other choice does she have? It really is, and it really is a big lift, as I said, this year, because it's a whole new LCAP. We're really attempting to have goals that allow us to be more coherent as a district and functioning together, not individually or as in silos, but like to really think of our work in a coordinated way. So you probably see that in the goals, and if you were to compare it to the past LCAP. So that's why there's so much work. But those are the next two steps, is the public hearing June 3rd, and then the adoption on the 17th. So that concludes our presentation. We're happy to take questions.
Thank you, staff. Before we kind of have a board questions and discussion, we'll open it up for public comment. So if there's anyone from the public who wishes to comment on this presentation and kind of specifically on these 5 main goals related to the LCAP, please use the raise hand feature now. And we'll give just a moment for anyone who wishes to speak to raise their hand. So if anyone wishes to speak, please raise your hand now. All right, it looks like there's just two. We'll give it maybe 10 more seconds if anyone else wishes to speak. All right, so Lee, I'll turn over to you. So it'll be 3 minutes per person, and then if you could share all the names of the hands that are raised. Looks like there's just two though.
Yes, so first up we have Maya Glick and then Donald Pearson. Maya, if you want to go ahead and unmute, there you go.
Yeah, so I'm going to speak about, do I need to speak about this presentation or?
Yes, correct, about the LCAP.
No, so sorry, I raised my hand before. I wanted to
Oh.
speak. And I wish
Okay.
I could speak because I have a lot of stuff to say.
Okay, thank you. You can always email us at meetingcomments@scsd.
Not the same email like speaking.
Okay, thank you. And it looks like Donald Pearson lowered his hand too.
Okay, I had noticed those up, so they might have been up from previous. Okay, so there are no other hands. Okay. Board, so I'd say before we go into each goal, if there are any specific questions about like, I guess more general questions, right? About how we got through this process. If there's any kind of history questions you have, let's maybe do that. If there's any general questions like that, and then we can maybe pull up each of the goals and kind of go through each of the goals. Does that sound good with you, board? Okay, so is there any general questions about the process? Nancy? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So for me, with the priority areas, it would be very helpful in the presentations, and I think helpful for the public as well, to delineate those specific areas. When you have the goal right now, I'm not talking about what the form says, but for us to understand and absorb these new targeted areas that have been designated, to list what areas specifically these match. How if we're integrating these goals and breaking down silos, if you can tell me within each goal succinctly which areas of the 8 target areas does this address, so then we can see in the totality, have we addressed all 8 areas? And is there one area that we are focusing more on than another? So in general, that would be helpful for me.
Nancy, you're saying like when it comes to us the first time in that presentation, like under goal 1, say goal 1 includes whatever 3, 7, and 8 of
correct.
Goal 3, and goal 2 includes. That
like
sounds.
that chart wasn't in the.
Yeah,
it wasn't in the presentation, right? So I
yeah,
mean,
we added that today.
We kind of got it later, so
yeah,
going back and forth between it was like, just trying to figure out, oh, how does that relate? And we didn't have it in front of us, so it was a matter of like whenever you refer to it on your screen. So if you just included it and just say like,
when we had the county office presentation or workshop today, I said, oh, I think the board would like to have that tonight. So I know you didn't get it before.
It's really interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, interrupt, but.
And also, we can definitely do that. And also just so that when we have the actual document on every goal, it has to say which specific priority you're addressing. So it's in the written document as well. That's part of how this will come out. But
Bring to those 8, because there's those 8 priorities, but then there's also the focus groups, which are also priorities as well, right?
Correct. Yes, the targeted areas.
No, but I mean, there's also the targeted groups, right? Like the
English language.
Yeah, English.
Yes, that's correct.
Remember, there's 3 of them, or there's 4 target groups?
There's 3.
3. Can you remind us, Mala, what those 3
Sure.
target groups
Low
are?
socioeconomic status, English learners, and foster youth.
Thank you. So we have those 8 focus areas, but then we have specific groups as well.
Target groups.
Thank you. Okay, any other general before we bring up the goals?
Well, I think, like for me, I feel like, instead of just like thinking about the goals, like for me, I'm really interested in
like alignment and like a basic understanding of like so that they really do meet student needs. Like, so regardless of what zip code a child is in, that they have access to services. I think that our Title I schools have just done an excellent job during this pandemic. I mean, I think that actually in every school where there are people working to serve these students, I think everyone's really been working really hard. But I feel like, maybe this LCAP might be a time to take things to that next level, where we really start looking across schools, across systems, and thinking about, I just hope that that's going to be a big focus of this. So regardless of the goal, that we think about like, hey, we have 300 or 400 kids who are 300 kids who are socioeconomically disadvantaged in the school, like that, even though they're not a majority, like we are going to provide a certain level of services for them, even though they're not a Title I school, even though it's not going to hit, or there's a school with just a few kids, we're going to make sure they get that curriculum that they need. And you know what I mean? Like I think that's really where the pandemic has seen that the schools that have a lot of coordinators and a lot of support have translated that pretty well. So, I mean, that's a very general question. I mean, a very general comment, but I just feel like it's such a great opportunity to be able to like take a breath this time at this point and look at a 3-year plan and say like, where do we want to be at the end of this 3 years? How do we want those kids to be served? So another thing that I'm looking for is the change in the language. I discovered today that Bridget and Isabel also attended Californians Together presentation on this, and there was a very definite change in language of how we had been describing things and what's the expectation now. So when that comes back to me with your more specific goals, I'm going to look for that more asset-based, child-focused measurable goals. It isn't that the other ones weren't, but they were more technical and not necessarily as student focused. So that's another thing.
Thanks, Nancy. Isabel, did you have a question or comment?
Yes, when I'm reading through them, I see, well, of course, there are goals towards, how we do better and how we actually try to cover most of what we really want to do. But they not always, I think, translate to an action plan. I worry that some of them might be a little bit too general. And I want to see how, if each side can actually choose and pick their focus, then some of these other 5 goals, like if there are 5, maybe I'm gonna focus in these 3, but then I think all of them are very important. So why, like how can we make sure that all of those are met in each side equally? Like if we have a strategy of centralizing some things like basic needs, so not only the schools who have the higher needs for these minimum basic needs, those are not the only schools that have a strong effort into that. Everybody, like we don't have gaps here and there in every side. It's very important with the partnering with the parents, that the partners in education, that's super important. but every side has a different approach to this, and some of them may not make it their priority. They have very important priorities, but maybe it's not that. So how can we assure in the language, and I don't know how these goals actually, we can set like a minimum bar for everybody, you know, like, okay, everybody needs to be very good at the 5 things, and because this is very important, and you know, it's not just food, is language, is the gap, how we're gonna really approach that huge gap, which is unfair. How can we make sure that we don't have whole life English learners? It's not possible that there are kids that need 6 or 7 years under our care. How can we make sure that our goals align with every side equally, and you know, make them strong, and you know, as a thing to really fulfill each of them? And that has to do well with all of them. You know, if we don't have partnership with the parents, these things are not going to be accomplished, and each of them is very important. How can we make sure that they are not just, they hold weight? It's not just something written on a paper. What is the plan and the action behind? You know, there are a lot of things, like when we talked a few weeks ago about that proposal, it sounds very nice, but if it doesn't have an strong action plan behind, you know, it's, yeah, and I thought it's just, you know, a greeting card. So nice to have it. It's not the law in the land. It's not really what we're gonna follow through. So I mean, as a general thought, all are valuable, important goals, but I just want to see like action plans attached to them, and a strong language, so we can assure that they are, you know, the law of the land pretty much.
So may I just add something over here? Sorry, Bridget, go ahead.
Go ahead, Mala. I'm going to add on to what she said too.
I was just going to address Isabel's request and just add, I think this slide that we've added in, thank you, Dr. Gallagher, about the 8 priorities. If we want to just put it up, Jeremy, if you don't mind putting it up one more time. I just want to show you something, because if we look at this 8 priorities, under each one of them, there are sub-bullets, and we are required as part of our plan to have metrics that are associated with each of these sub-bullets. It doesn't mean we can't have more, but for each of these, our plan will not be approved if we don't have very specific measurable outcomes for each of these areas. So I'll just give you an example. In the first one, where it talks about basic services, or maybe the second one is academic content. What are we providing? Performance standards. How are we meeting that? So we have to have a metric that shows how this is going to be accomplished. And at the end of the year, we're required to write out an annual update that reflects on how did we do, and then that will be shared as well. So thank you for the suggestion, and I just wanted to make sure I pointed this out as part of the process.
Can I add on to what Isabel's saying? So I feel like there is a danger with these forms and things that are going to the state and to the county and everything, that it just becomes viewed as compliance culture, you know. And I mean, and how I perceive that, maybe that term is used a little differently, but how I interpret that is, here's this thing I have to comply with, and I'm going to say, yeah, I checked a box. Like, I invited the parents to come, nobody came, but we did it, and like, check the box, you know. Or yep, we offered, you know, ELD instruction, and you know, this other school is like funding it with, like, they've got a coach, and they've got whatever, they've got a translator in the room, and they've got an extra para in the room, and they've got people in that room, and we're going to focus on that, and we're going to get our library, you know, we're going to put our money towards that, and we're going to do all these things. And it's like, well, that's that school's choice. And like, that school is doing everything that we want everybody to do, right? And so we want that kind of, we want parent engagement that's like real. We want parents, you know, we want this to not just be a report that is done, you know, like we really believe in this stuff. And I feel like there's things that we just are going to have to decide at maybe at the, you know, school leadership through our LCAP level of how we want to start, you know, creating systems of a support across the thing. You know, we had those people who were speaking in public comment about supporting the Juntos teachers. There are #1 resource of bilingual education in this district. And so like the amount of learning and working with English language learners, and yes, in a bilingual environment, but just, you know, reaching those families and those kids, like they just have a lot of wealth of knowledge. So if the English learners is a targeted group, like let's leverage those resources that we have, you know, or the engagement, you know, that's coming out of some of our specialty magnet programs. Like let's leverage that stuff. Let's leverage the project-based learning. Let's leverage the, you know, the different types of spaces that schools have created. And like, let's put that in the plan as, I mean, that's just like my goal is to like unify things more and give everybody the resources that they need. So I know this isn't going goal by goal, but I feel like in general, that's my feeling about it.
Mala, were you going to say something?
I'm okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm wondering if it might be helpful if maybe like each board member kind of shares maybe their like 1 or 2, like if we're looking at, it sounds like Lassa's kind of the goals generally. It's like, what are kind of the 1 or 2 focus areas or things that are most important that you want to see? So maybe if each board member can just do a quick, like, just share it quickly, and then if people want to like, you know, talk about it later, but maybe each board member kind of shares their 1 or 2 kind of, this is what I really want to see, or this is, you know, does that make sense what I'm asking? Okay. Anyone want to go first? I can share. So this is a very general, I mean, we have a few specific questions with goals later, but this is kind of a general, as we're, and it kind of, it goes, I mean, it's specific for LCAP, but it also goes broader to kind of also looking at the 3 focus areas, right? So especially I think the renewal, reimagining, and recovery. But I just have like in the last few weeks, just reading a lot, you know, people use the term learning loss. And there's a lot of people are using it, but then a lot of people are saying, hey, that's not a good way to look at it, right? And one of the, I read a whole bunch of stuff, but I tried to pull like some of my like favorite pieces to try to kind of capture like the vision of what I'm hoping. So like one of the things, so since you read that idea, instead of talking in the context, which I think we're doing a good job at, but just a reminder, right? Instead of talking in the context as we're working on the LCAP and as we're working on the gaps that were already there before, right? That there's not, you know, this is not a new thing that there are gaps in the schools, it's just shown more. But instead of focusing on using the terms learning loss and deficit, which I don't think we do, but I just want us to focus on the positive, right? So one of the, I loved it says, they remember that, especially from this last year, right? Remember their brains did not go into hibernation during this year. Their brains may not have been focused on traditional school material, but they did not stop either. And then it talks about how their brains have done lots of different things, right? And it goes through a whole variety of things that have been happening during the pandemic. And it says, our job is to welcome them back into a safe and supportive learning environment. It's the children do not need to be fixed. They are not broken. Time was not lost. It was invested in contending with and surviving in an historic period in their lives. They need to be heard and supported. They need to be given as many tools as we can provide to nurture resilience and help them adjust to a post-pandemic world. So I think we all already like feel this, but it just has been something that's important to me that I want to make sure, like, as we're talking about wording and language, right? Like, I think we're on that, but while like I like the word recovery, right? Like there are things we need to address, right? We need to have some extra supports in place. Absolutely. Extra time, tutoring. But while we're doing that, right? Like putting a positive spin on it, right? So that's just an important piece that I want to see. So that's kind of my piece. And then the other piece that's important to me generally, which is it's all schools face this struggle, right? It's like, I remember several years ago, I think Reed had said it, from someone else saying it, that idea that if the problem was easy to solve, it would have already been solved. So I know this is one of those ones, but that idea of if we really want to help all students, and then specifically these groups of students who have often been underserved, we all know we have to know what they need, right? And that's just one of the biggest challenges, is really knowing what they need. And so for me, that's kind of been what I feel like is maybe one of the focus areas, right? Is like how, which I know we're already doing it, but how really putting time into how can we better know the needs of the students and families that are underserved, right? Because as we do that, then we can actually fit them better. So those are kind of my two general overarching things that are important to me moving forward.
I have stuff to say, but I'm trying to be cool. I talked too much already. So unless somebody else go first, and then I'll say something.
So the two components, I would say, while I echoed it in looking for different language, it's the reimagining that I want to see. I appreciate research and that data-driven, informed approach, thought process, but this is our opportunity to break free of some of the paradigms that have held us back, and look at our unconscious biases that we have about trying things that we haven't tried before, making sure that the reason why we haven't tried it is not a function of data, but questioning what is this a belief? Just making sure that we have that opportunity to innovate, because I think one of the strengths of our district is that we have been very innovative and collaborative. So I want to encourage that continuing thing. And in the reimagining, I'm deeply concerned about the long-term English language learners. And we'll get into that more specifically about that goal. But that really means that there's more intensive engagement with families to understand how we can support them better in that particular journey. Because I think we do a disservice as we look at the overarching goal of career and college readiness if we don't strive to have them be able to access the high school curriculum, which is that pathway.
Thank you, Nancy. All right, who wants to go next? Isabel, is that you? Go for it.
Yeah, I don't want to monopolize the thing. There. Well, I mean, in general, all of them are valuable, important goals. Priorities, a lot. We can start with, I mean, that gap is not gonna go away until we make sure that the basic needs are covered, sorry. Those gaps are not gonna go away until we are sure that we are really partnering with everybody in the community. Our partners are the families and the teachers, together with administration and the community. We need to make sure that the teachers are heard and taken care of, because they are our front soldiers, of course, but also the families. I can tell you that minorities don't feel welcome in many places, and they just, like, they don't feel every day that they have to be educating the public in general or fighting a war. Just day by day, they just give up and say, like, let's move forward with our life. Not everybody has the stamina to confront that every day. And unless we don't have a real friendly approach to actually actively open the doors in every side, the gap is going to stay there, and our achievement goals are not going to be met until we don't really partner with the families. If we are not aware of what else we can do, how we can approach them, how we can welcome them, how we can read together, play together, sing, do stuff together, that gap is not going to change. And a lot of people just, it's like, well, I don't feel like fighting this week. I don't feel like being, face on polite people in my everyday life. I don't feel like people not returning the hello, not returning emails. I just, like, why bother? Why to keep doing this? So the partnering is basic, and it should be everywhere, a real effort to partner with everybody in the community, so the kids can feel welcome, and the kids can feel like this is also my home, and the families can feel like I can propose things to my partners' teachers because they are part of my community and my family. We can have a frank conversation. So that part is important. The partnering part, family is, is at the center of everything. And if they are not part of the educational process, it's never going to move forward. The part about learning, I mean, it's not just some years. If you see the approach, some years we are a little bit up, some years are a little bit down. Some schools do go faster in their requalification than others. But still, I think that 11, 12% a year, even if it's a state standard, this is just too slow. I think we should do better. And the way to do better is partnering actually with the families and having a complete holistic approach to what is going on with the children and with what is going on with everybody's need. So those two goals are, I think, I completely attach. We do have a lot in our, I mean, it's not that we don't do a lot. It's just that we can do more. We can put it in front. Maybe some pros that haven't been working the last 20 years need a tweaking to make it work in the next 20 years. They look very awesome, but somehow not everything is given the solution. Maybe the times have changed. People learn in a different way. Maybe we can do more in many of these goals to take out the, to break this gap, this huge learning gap. And of course, the ones that are always behind are the low-income kids, are the minorities, are the learning, special groups, the kids that need to learn the language. So all that ties together. We do have we have a great opportunity with those singular programs that we have, because they connect the community and they bring the community into our sites. And I think that's something that we should push as much as we can. All these special programs that we have, I mean, we should add more and more layers and make this partnering between the communities and the schools and the teacher even stronger. So those, you know, I think those are two of the main goals that I saw, but actually the 5 of them, you know, are worthy goals, but they need to come with a strong implementation and a new plan. And I know that we do have, we have a lot of innovation. And I know when I talked with Mala last year, she was telling me about all this new, I think there was a teacher today that was asking for that, and it's coming like all these new books that are culturally relevant, that connect with the child and the family, that are getting into our curriculum. So we can actually, that increase our partnership goal, that increase our connection with the people, with everybody, with my kids' friends, with my teachers, because, you know, that's a very important action that we can take from that goal. But, you know, they all need to be with a very strong, direct, and innovative plan behind each of these goals. And I'm sorry, I'm gonna give everybody else the opportunity.
Thanks, Isabel. Mala, did you have something you wanted to say? Okay. Bridget?
So I think, you know, the English language learners are, I can't wait till we get to that conversation, you know, because I think that there is so much new research and there's so much that's going on in the district. And I guess, like, for me, I agree with what Nancy said about innovation a lot. I do think that there are a lot of new resources out there and we should look at our language. I agree with Isabel with the idea of parent engagement and doing that more, reimagining what that is. And I just feel like, you know, we have like some really hardworking and brilliantly engaged staff, right? And it would just be like, but I feel like we're at this phase where we're duplicating a lot of efforts, like in pockets. So like, for instance, like whether it's, like, and the pandemic's been really good because it's forced teachers across grade levels to maybe, and across school sites even, to like help one another with, you know, onboarding the new curriculum and translating existing stuff into the virtual world. And they've done a lot of partnering. But it seems like we need to start doing that with these systems that we have, right? So when we did that panorama survey in the fall and learned about the students who had been hungry in the last few days, they were at every school site. And I feel like, you know, the idea that like our food services, or our, you know, some of our services that are, they're really student services or they're really educational services, because if you can't, you know, the people who put together the lunches at all those school sites, you know, all the lunch staff, there's this very satisfying feeling that they're getting from feeding people, right? Like they're very pumped about it and they're very organized and they're doing such a wonderful job. And yet we know that there's kids out there who are not being fed. So, you know, the more we get the families engaged and the more we really look at our systems and like think about that as an education service or as a student service, the more we're going to serve our students and families. And so like, I'm interested in the pockets of kids that are sort of underserved in these schools, and
I'm interested in best practices. And I loved all the kind of footnotes that you guys had underneath all of the goals that you were talking about. And I wish that those were bullet points that I could just look at and go, yep, yep, yep. Because I feel like when you were talking, you were saying a lot of the stuff that, like, you know, we're expressing concerns or interest in. But because we just have the goals as the presentation, like, you know, I feel like I'm just trying to, you know, make sure that things like, make sure things are like, I mean, my frustration as a parent, right? It's just terrible. And it's not a frustration with like the people doing the job. It's just trying to figure out like how to take it to that next level, because we have this opportunity right now. And for me, like I feel like when we're looking at strategies, I'm really hoping that we like get really heavy into extended time, the culturally responsive teaching and curriculum, and family engagement. So that's it. So my apologies if I'm coming off as a total, you know, swear word. I just am not trying to at all. I am just so I just see the opportunity right there, and I feel like I don't want to miss it, you know. So sorry.
Thanks, Bridget. Nancy, do you want to say something, and then we'll let, and then Jeff, or do you want to have Jeff, and then do you want to share
Well,
something?
no, it's I haven't heard from Jeff, and I want to make sure that Jeff has a voice in this. And can you help me understand where we're going next? So we've had these things, and now are we going to be going through each one and having the same conversations, or doing it, or have we? You know, how are we going to tie this up neatly? Because what our goal, what I see our goal is tonight, to say, yes, we're going on the right direction. Thank you for helping us educate ourselves about this new process. And we're looking forward to coming back with all the details that you're going to be putting in there. So.
Yes, I think that will be the tie up at the end, but let's let Jeff have a chance to share. Thanks, Nancy.
I really don't have much to add to what's already been spoken. I mean, I think a lot of the answers to talking about what Nancy said, long-term EL students, I think that's a continued effort that we need to reach out to. And I think that might be also tied closely to outreach efforts to the communities that we need to pay attention to and get more involved with. So that's really all I have.
Thanks, Jeff. Well, I was gonna I was taking notes, people, and I think Jeff, the two Jeffs that, which is kind of like people said, I think is kind of the summary of the focus, right? The two focuses: English learners, and particularly, you know, the concern of the long term, which, you know, Mala had also mentioned that earlier. And then people had different pieces of parent engagement, connecting families, right? But it was all the same, right? Like my thought of, we need to know what they need in order to serve them, right? And I think each person had a different piece of it, but I think those were the two. So it looks like board's nodding, right? So those are kind of the two main kind of, I think, focus areas, right? There's lots of other stuff, right? We don't want to ignore everything, but kind of the focus areas as we're developing the LCAP, you know, the different pieces of it. And then, yeah, if there's any, I don't think, I mean, I don't think we need to necessarily go through each goal, but if somebody just has a specific like question or comment from a specific goal, I think that enough of this conversation, I think, brought out probably a lot of the different things. But if anyone has a specific question that they didn't feel like it got addressed, we can do that just, you know, quick couple minutes here if anybody had something. So is there anyone who has something specific from one of the goals, a question they had? No questions?
Go ahead.
I was going
We'll
to say,
Nancy and then Bridget.
I think I want to, I think it would be helpful for staff to have the bullet points to push out to us in
in a letter in the next couple of weeks. That kind of is the foundation that we can take and look for when we see things coming back in June. That would be really helpful.
I'm not sure I know, Mala, do you know what she means? I want to make sure I understand what the request is.
So
I'm hearing the request as goals and associated actions. Even
oh, gotcha. Okay, that's easy. Yeah.
Right, you articulated it, but there wasn't a visual for me, and I need that visual grounding, especially tonight.
Yeah, yeah.
With those the eight things, right?
Well, the 8 things, but you've already identified under each goal what it is, some big ideas, and that's all I.
Okay. Yes. So just process-wise, we absolutely are able to do that, Nancy. And just process-wise, just to be clear, as part of our consultation with the different stakeholders, this was a conversation. So we've taken copious notes on what you've shared as your interest to make sure they're incorporated in our actions. And our next step is going to be, we have DLAC next week, because that's part of a requirement and definitely something we value. They will look at and give feedback on they've already done it once, but they'll do it again now that we've collected everyone's input. And you're all invited to attend DLAC, you know that, right? 28th of April, 6:30 p.m.
Yes, because I don't want to micromanage. I want to set it free and let you and let awesomeness bubble up. So it was just there were some indicators of direction underneath each one of those goals, and that was just what I wanted to hold in my mind to see how that gets reflected in the document. So thank you.
Thanks, Nancy. Bridget?
Yeah, just kind of circling back just to the language as well. We looked at it was from the EL roadmap. They had some like in their thing that I forwarded out to
from California
was the presentations from that. It's right.
Yeah.
So like around page 35, they just talk about like the old way of thinking about things and the new way of thinking about things, more assets based, and like Nancy was mentioning. Mm-hmm. And I just feel like, like even the term English language learner, I feel like, especially for our kids who are coming in, the long-term English language learners, like they're really heritage speakers of another language. And I feel like maybe if we describe them as heritage speakers of another language, then that's like really, it's true that they are learning English, but that there are multi-language speakers. So it's true that they're learning English and maybe they're not like proficient to the state standard for heritage speakers of English or whatever. They're not, reclassified yet. But I feel like even just having that mindset of like how we're labeling children, how we're thinking about children that are even within these special groups, so I just want to challenge us to look at that when we put forward the language, because I feel like I just worry that that it becomes deficit thinking in itself, right? So we want to address the problem. We can't address our challenges without quantifying like what it is we want them to do. But I feel like we need to think about, just as a thought about how we're framing the support documentation and the goals and everything that goes with it, and
Bridget, I can definitely look into it, but as far as I know, this is the state title for this group of students, and I'm not sure we're going to be able to change that, at least in this.
Maybe document. Like in the supporting things that come after it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I just feel like there might be a way to be supportive and inclusive more. So, but thank you.
Thank you. All right, any other last comments or thoughts? All right, I just have two. One is just generally, I was happy with these general goals. I think they really do capture, the things that we've been talking about and are important for our community. And so I really liked them. And I just wanted kind of one specific one. And I don't know, I think it maybe go under goal 1, but then I also like it probably connects to the culturally responsive teaching a little bit. So I don't know exactly where it would go. And I know we've talked about this in the past, but connected to the piece of high quality teaching, I think the like recruiting diverse staff, right? And I know we've talked about it before, but and you probably already have plans to have that in there, but that is something that I think that I would like, and I'm seeing board members nodding, right? Having something in there, right? What are we doing to work towards that? So that's just a specific piece that would be nice to have in there. But thank you everyone for all the work. I know that there's a lot more of logistical stuff that you guys have to go and finish up with, and we appreciate all the time you put into it to really make this like a document that we work on and we use and we do. And like Mala said, I think in the past she talked about there's a follow-up piece, right? So I don't think we've done that in the past, but the plan will be now. So next springish, maybe about this time, as we're kind of doing a study session related to LCAP, it will also be a kind of a check-in. Okay, here were some of the goals, here were the focus areas. We can't go through every single one of the specific action items, but kind of the focus areas and check in how we're doing, how we did on it, as we move forward to make any adjustments as they adjust the LCAP for the following year. So I think that will be a great part of it. So thank you, Mala and team. Okay.
Team is the right word. It really is a team effort. There are so many of us on screen and those that aren't on screen with us that are working towards this. So thank you.
Thank you, Mala. Okay, we are on to the second one, which is the COVID relief. So 7B, the COVID relief funds. And I believe we're turning it over to Lori.
Okie dokie. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. So this is a 30,000-foot overview of the COVID relief funds that we currently have on the books. If I can figure out how to turn the page, maybe. There we go. Okie dokie. So the first one is the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Funds. It's more commonly referred to as the Esser Funds. After that is the Governor's Emergency Education Relief Fund, focused on learning loss mitigation. That's called the GEAR funding. And there's the Coronavirus Relief Fund for learning loss mitigation. We call it CRF. SB 17 COVID-19 LEA response funds, the state partner to the Coronavirus Relief Fund for learning loss mitigation. And then finally, 2 AB 86 funding sources that are just coming out and the plans are in development, one for in-person instruction and another one for expanded learning opportunities. So I'll talk briefly about each one separately. The first one is the Esser Funds. These are federal funds. Our allocation was a little over $432,000. These funds are fully expended. We spent $165,000 on independent study teacher salary and benefits, $24,000 on sanitizing equipment, specifically touch-free hand sanitizing stations, digital thermometers, and air filters. $2,000 on food service supplies. These were larger bags to hold the bundles and larger containers to put the food in for the families. $6,000 for signage for safety posters. $231,000 for student devices, hotspots, and SLG support. And then finally, $4,000 for COVID vaccine-related emergency paid sick leave. Next is the GEAR funding. These are also federal funds, a little over $322,000. We have $125,000-ish left to spend on this. $192,000 is the contract for pediatric therapy services for targeted social, emotional, and academic support for our SLGs. We provided the schools with portable digital radios, and that was $6,000. And then the final $125,000 is reserved for future device purchases. Next is the Coronavirus Relief Fund for Learning Loss Mitigation. This one had the shortest spending timeline of all funds. These are federal funds also, a little over $2.9 million. And we received these funds in late fall, and I had till the end of the year to spend them. So $1.1 million on student devices and hotspots, $46,000 for food service, overtime, salary, and benefits, $158,000 for our independent study software program, and $541,000 for independent study teacher salary and benefits, $97,000 for our outreach assistants, social workers, and nurse FTE salary and benefits for $435,000. Summer learning certificated staff salary and benefits of $169,000, and finally our SLG paras for $327,000. SB 17 was the first of the coronavirus relief funds that we received. This was just something to get us started on the right foot to collect things that we needed to get everything going for the pandemic, $111,000. $6,300 on PPE, specifically sneeze guards, face shields, and face masks. We bought electrostatic sprayers, which are backpack sort of things that the custodial staff like walk around and spray to disinfect everything. And that was $54,000, and then air scrubbers and air filters for $49,000, and finally some more signage for $2,000, and those funds are fully expended as well. Then we had the state learning loss mitigation funds. These are, like I said, state funds, a little less than $500,000 for these. So again, independent study teacher and paraprofessional FTE for $350,000. Classroom software licenses, specifically you see there Ed Puzzle videos, Ingenuity Digital Library, and Pearson testing protocols for $49,000. A little bit more of the contract for pediatric therapy services was included here for $8,000. And food service staff overtime salary and benefits for $93,000. And this is also fully expended. So this is the new funding that's coming down the pike. One is for the in-person instruction grant. These are state funds. And it's a pretty broad on what we can spend it on. These are the things that the CDE specifically has pointed out as allowable uses. So COVID-19 testing, PPE, cleaning, disinfecting, and ventilation equipment, certificated and classified salaries, and social emotional support. So this is the one that we are going to have a 1% reduction per instructional day where we didn't have all of our grade levels in person. So we have up till May 15th to get that going, but we do lose 1% each day. There is a plan required for this that needs to be board approved by June 1st. Unfortunately, the CDE has not released the template for this plan, and it's not slated to be released until May 1st, which means we have about a week to get the plan together and have the county do a first read before we bring it to you for approval on May 20th. And my best guess for what we're going to have as a reduction in this grant for not having all grade levels is about $200,000. So this is the Expanded Learning Opportunity Grant, also part of AB 86. $3.9 million is our allocation, and $388,000 of that has to be spent on paraprofessional salaries and benefits. So this list of things here are the only things that we can spend this on. So extended instructional time, accelerated progress to close learning gaps, and as I said, $388,000 for paraprofessional salaries and benefits. Integrated student supports, additional academic services for students, training for staff on strategies for trauma-informed practices, and then accelerating progress to close learning gaps and support for credit deficient students for graduation, and the access to technology and high-speed internet. So this template is out. So we are scrambling while we're working on the 1920 LCAP annual update and the 2021 LCP annual update and the 21-24 LCAP. We're also working on this plan too. So lots of plans in the works. This one also has to be board approved by June 1st. So we'll be bringing this to you on May 20th for approval. And that's it. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Lori. If there's anyone from the public who has any comments about the COVID relief funds in this presentation, please use the raise hand feature now. All right, I'm not seeing any. Last call. All right, board, questions or comments? Like Nancy, go ahead.
Yes. Thank you for documenting exactly how much was being spent in what particular areas. I'm really excited about the opportunities in the grant funding. I would like to have a priority on the putting a chunk of money into the extended learning that allows us to do things for multiple years rather than looking at this as a one-time funding source. We never know what budgets are going to be like year to year. And so having something that will last beyond the next year would be super phenomenal if we're looking at reinventing and looking at supporting youth differently and going deeper into specific areas of their need. So if I were to prioritize, that would be where I would like to have some significant chunk of money spent on the grant.
So Michelle, if I can ask for clarification, Nancy, I think what I hear you saying is that even though these are one-time funds, to
Correct.
think in terms of, hey, this is an opportunity to try things that could be applied longer.
Well, yeah, you can spend that money for more than that one calendar year.
Uh-oh, she froze.
All right, let's give it just a second because we might need to go to Bridget, have Nancy reconnect. All right, Bridget, why don't you start? It might get interrupted by a delayed comment. Why don't you go ahead, Bridget?
Okay, so today at the school boards, the SCCBA, whatever, bag lunch with school board members across the county, Marianne Dewan came, she's the county superintendent, and she was saying that one thing that they're really talking about for reopening is the need for testing, because most of the school-age children, elementary school, will likely not have any, vaccine available. And so she was just urging people to make sure that they had a plan and set something up so that we could, protect our community and our staff and just really make sure we can stay open, because we would have a good understanding of people's status. So I'm going to hope that we, watch how that's developing with the county. It sounds like she's going to be offering advice on that. And I don't know who else was, I know Nancy was there today. I don't know who else was in that call. And then my other comment was for technology. There's a comment and a question. So for technology, I know that there's like usual teacher refresh for technology, and we've decided to centralize the purchasing of technology. Isabel and I were out at SMS today, and we talked to one of the assistant principals, and she was mentioning to us about how, the things that the teachers are trying to do, they're finding sometimes they need multiple devices. They are issued a laptop, but maybe they want to use the iPad, but they can't use the stylus to draw on it because it's an older version. And, you know, so things that might have normally in a normal cycle for the staff might not have needed to be refreshed. We might, it sounds like they're finding out quickly that how they need to teach with masks on. And, you know, we've been to a couple sites where we've seen some assistive technology for voice amplification and some other things that aren't very expensive, but over maybe we need to have, you know, a menu of things that people you know, could choose from, or, you know, that are district approved, or like, if you are doing this, you might want to try this, or you might need this. But my question was about, my question around technology was, we also went out to Lakewood, and Lakewood was saying, you know, their tech EQ, but, you know, will they be, if they're trying to do more innovation and use technology a little bit differently, like, will they be able to access something as a special project, or are we thinking everyone gets exactly the same thing? Maybe if it's, you know, really important to their program to do things a little bit differently, you know, can we support everybody a little bit differently in that way? Can we, or is everything just going to be completely, you know, is equal, equitable, I guess, you know, like, what do they need? And then for my question about the additional instruction is, can we afford, and do we have staff for summer school for everyone who wants it? Like, not just based on teacher recommendation, but can we, you know, if we're opening up 6 sites and we're using a ton of rooms, like, do we think we'll have it for anyone who wants it? And then my last comment is,
Hey, Bridget, why don't you just pause a second? So Mike was nodding his head.
Okay.
But could you, that is an interesting question. So if you think we're going to be able to do that, so you're saying you think we'll have budget to be able to open it up more than just the invitations?
There's budget for it, for sure. Mala can fill you in a little bit more on like how many students have actually signed up and some of the logistics there. So the budget's there. The teachers being there is a challenge, and the kids being there is a bigger challenge. So like right now, the middle school signups are pretty low. It's early, but I don't know, Mala, do you want to fill in?
You're muted, Mala.
Thank you, Michelle. I still haven't learned. 13 months later, I'm still talking away. And
happens to all of us still, no worries.
I know it's also almost 10 o'clock, way past my regular bedtime. But so we definitely, you know, Mike has been very, very consistent in the messaging about it's going to be open to, you know, we have a tiered system, right? So we're taking in the ones who really need it first and then opening it to more. But the staffing is really the main issue. And even with our collaboration with Stanford, we're getting as many teachers as we can. And elementary students are signing up in droves. It's the middle school students that we're trying really hard to reach out to and get, because we want to make sure the ones who need it get it, and then more.
so we're thinking that the middle school will be more like the 6th grade model. Will be more like a in-person, not Zooming model.
It's all in person, Bridget.
Yeah.
Summer school
Well,
is
I mean,
in person.
Because like in person means different things, right? So I mean, so we're
no in-person instruction. The teacher's going to teach and the students are going to be there, and that's it. There's no one sitting at home and zooming in.
Okay, that might be good to. Okay, that's exciting.
And well, that's a good point, Bridget. If that's not clear to people, like it's clear to us, but like we've got to communicate that.
Right. Yeah, I thought that was clear, but yeah, if Bridget's not, that is a good reminder that maybe that messaging is somehow getting missed or not quite out there. Yeah.
Yep.
And then my last thought was, I really hope we can, like, just the summary pages, I think are really nice and concise for like, we got this money, this is what we spent it on. But then as we decide as a district, like what our priorities are for like what we're going to be spending the money that we haven't spent yet, but we have like a few, like whether it's 1 year or 3 years to spend, like it would be, I think it'd be really helpful to have that as, since we have to track it separately anyway, is to kind of have that list like available to us at every board meeting, or just, just to say like, hey, this is what we're, or not every board meeting, like however often, and just keep it up on the website so people know, because that is something that the community will ask us. They'll be like, so you're getting tons of money, what are you spending it on? And it's like, you can go right there and look, and rather than have it be part of the budget or something, that would just be, I think, a helpful corner to
we do have to approve, right? So the plans for those 2 that haven't been spent, it's going to come to us and we'll approve that plan of how it will be spent.
Okay, so that was my question, was about the technology. Like, are we thinking that we're going to be like, what's the idea on evaluating technology needs? Maybe it's a way of saying it.
Rob, do you want to jump in? There he is.
Hey, everybody.
Hi, Rob. Good to see you.
So Bridget, I heard a couple of the questions you were asking there, and I think I'll start with a couple that I can probably speak to in the most concise manner, and I'll start with the Lakewood question there. So spoken to the principal, Dr. Chang, out at Lakewood a couple of times, and have asked her or recommended that she bring to us some, because we have established with a team that Mala brought together a standard for across the district to really ensure that all of our students have access to technology for that just-in-time use, and also to make sure that regardless of what funding the schools may have, they all have devices that we are considering to be within a current window. So I do see that window possibly changing as years pass, based on really what the device, based on the operating system on it, is capable of supporting. So that it'll change. So please don't take this as like forever gospel. But right now we're looking at a standardization of an iPad being 5 years and newer, a Chromebook being 3 years and newer. And then, if they become more robust or less, depending on where they are, we may have to flex that a little bit. But that's something that I'm working with Lori also on a long-term kind of a budget stabilization plan as well for it. But to speak to some sites where they may have unique requests, the recommendation was made to put forth a rationale and explain why that is something that you believe would be a benefit and what the benefit would be. So, and she and I have had a chance to talk to that about a couple of times, but definitely is not a conversation that we've had a chance to conclude. So,
oh yeah, I mean, I'm sure every school site has different ideas, right? So I was just wondering how that was going to work if we were going with the standardization thing. And then what about the teacher stuff?
So the teacher devices, about 3 years ago, I believe it was, 2018, we moved to a essentially managed teacher laptop program, really for one of the biggest reasons being as a benefit to the staff members, because if they were moving from site to site, they were having to leave the device that they had assigned to them at the school site and get a new one and data transfer. So it was to help clean up logistics for that. And then also, again, to give us a very stable projection as far as need go long-term. This particular year, we actually refreshed 2 years worth of teachers, because the ones that were going to be refreshed next year, their devices were not supporting the distance learning as well as we would like them to. So we jumped ahead of the curve, obviously not anticipating that we'd be doing a whole year in the mode that we did. But beyond that, it's a bit of a variable on the sites too, based on the inventories that they have available to give to the staff. I could see that there could be the needs for that, or for assisted listening, or any sort of amplification. And it's things that the sites have occasionally brought to our attention, and I appreciate you bringing it up as well. And again, all of those things we just would have to balance against resources available for them, and then the benefit of deploying those. So I think it's just something that we can continue to look at. So I do appreciate you bringing it up. I don't know if I caught all the questions as you were saying them, but was that?
Those were my technology ones for sure. Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely.
And then what was the status on testing, COVID-19 testing? Or Mike, is that something that's happening like with the other district superintendents? Are you guys talking about that, or like for student testing, it sounded like.
Still, I know that we still can't require it, but that might be something that emerges. And if it does, we certainly have the funding for it. The amount of funding that we have in that AB 86, the ongoing money is substantial. So that would be the basis for that. I really don't know the plan at this point yet. I know that, and Jeremy knows a little bit about this, we offered, you're very quick turning on your camera. We offered community testing like in the last week through El Camino, and it was, what, 8 people signed up, something like that, Jeremy? So
about a dozen. It was safe to say it was underwhelming. We had to end up canceling the event, and then El Camino routed the 12 folks who had signed up to their facilities. And I just had a conversation that I was updating Mike about today, that knowing that the testing for students is something in the future, our MOU with them sunsets on June 30th. And they're the 4 districts that El Camino supports is they're looking for to have that conversation, and they're preparing to have to go back to their board to see if they could re-up again with the community testing. And then again, we have our on-site antigen testing through Tasha's team and the nurses, but I don't think that could scale necessarily to students, right? Because again, we're hitting staff on a biweekly basis, but I think it's all being worked. We're working on things, learning now, and it's just preparing for that eventuality that's coming up. But El Camino did it. We're going to engage back in July once Dr. Gallagher gets more information. So we'll be able to, but that is on our radar. But
what's great is El Camino has been an amazing partner. So for example, like when we try something like this community testing and it doesn't work, it's not like they say, well, we give up, we're moving on. Like they want to keep working with us. I mean, they were the ones that approached us initially with the staff testing. We were one of the first districts that did that. I mean, they've been fantastic. So we're going to keep trying different things. So we'll be well positioned if it becomes a requirement, or if it becomes something that we want to strongly recommend that we think the community's for or ready for.
And I just wanted to quickly say, Nancy's been back on for a while. She's just having technical stuff. So she's on a phone call, so she can hear. And if she wants to speak, she can speak. But I just want everyone to know that she is here and listening, even though we don't see her. Okay, any other specific questions about the COVID relief before we move on? And Aaliyah, is Nancy trying?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I was going to ask Aaliyah if Nancy's, I don't know if we'll see if Nancy's trying to speak or not.
I can try to ask to unmute and see if that brings up a button for her. But it's *6 to unmute yourself, or *9 to raise your hand for phone call-ins.
Bridget, while we're waiting to see if Nancy had any comments, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna, well, gosh, now I'm so distracted. I forgot what I was gonna ask. Sorry, I wrote it down.
You're good. You're good. While you're thinking, I just have one. I just want to share. I have a little bit different feeling than what Nancy had shared about the extended learning. So I agree with her. Like extended learning, super valuable, super important. Would love to, continue on with some sort of extended learning, ongoing. I do. So I agree with that piece. But I also, because we have extra one-time funding right now, I very much I'm happy if we can do more than we do lots this year, and I'm okay if we can't continue that lots in the future, right? I mean, I would love to, but I don't want to only do what we can do sustainably, if that makes sense, right? Like I would love to, with the extra funding, let's do as much of that fantastic extended learning as we can this year. And kind of like what Mike, you said a little bit, maybe it'll allow us to be creative, try different things. And maybe we can't do all of them, but maybe we figure out this year, oh, well, this one was probably the most effective and we can do that one ongoing or something, right? So it might not be a disagree with Nancy, but that was just my thought about that I wanted to share.
I remember now. So
okay, Bridget and then Isabel, and then hopefully we can wrap up this.
Okay,
section.
sorry. So I was talking to the new PTA president over at San Miguel, and she was talking about how they've done a little survey of their members and of families there. And she was saying that, she spends quite a bit of time like talking to community members and talking to people in the park. And the number one thing, I went to the PTA meeting, and the number one thing that they found was that most people wanted community events and community building. They wanted that. And it really was when you were talking about extended time, I was thinking about all of the like club-like things and like ways that schools were trying to connect the children to one another socially, to build those social and emotional alliances and stuff. So I just feel like it would be great if some of those things could continue, or for some of our sites that are underserved with after-school programs or like sports or music or things, like if we could really, if there is a desire to like just flood the zone with extended time, like I think that would just be amazing, for this, especially for the coming year, the summer and into next year.
Yeah, I don't know, Michelle. Can I? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, that part about extended learning, and it comes together with recovery, and that can be just a great opportunity of proving and trying new things that we haven't been able, because now is a good moment to innovate and to help with anyone who was affected by the pandemic, and like new programs that we can add to each site has a particular requirement, that we can add education in the afternoons, as I think we talked about this before, like extra layers of music or outdoors learning. There is like a couple of sites that have asked for more opportunities for outdoor classrooms, applying science, like in Vargas, so everybody can go outside and use the garden as a science experiment, and that can, I think, apply for every site. It has an opportunity for that, so we can fund those programs. Any opportunity that we have to make it more active, more engaged, and if we can give, an extra hour of something that is going to help recover in the afternoons, or depending of each side what their particular needs are, or a maker space, or more activities with technologies, or anything that's going to help and support the kids. We should try to bring all those to the tables and take all those grants for that. This is a great opportunity to try new things, add extra layers to each of our programs and each of our sites, and see what works, and whatever sticks, we can keep funding it later.
So Nancy actually was able to raise her hand. Nancy, are you able to unmute yourself? Ah, there we go. Hello. Oh, we can't hear you if you're talking, Nancy.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now we can.
Okay, awesome. So I'm not sure if I completed my thought in reflection back to Mike. So the monies, I would love to go for that innovation component, and it yields a possibility of having monies that we could use multiple years. I don't have the need to necessarily spend it all in 1 year, is what I'm saying. Because depending upon what you want to do, you might need more than a year to evaluate.
Wait, I thought
so I like the flexibility.
one of them's 1 year, one of them's 3 years?
Lori, can you remind us again what the deadline is for the second part of the AB 86?
The extended learning opportunity grant has to be fully expended by August 31st of 22.
So that's August of next school year.
And
Correct,
then,
like a year from August.
and then the other one, do we get 3 years to spend it, or just are they
2
both?
years. Both
2
of the AB 86 are August of 2022.
Okay, thank you. But it sounds like we're all basically on the same page with that.
Yeah, if there's a good idea, we'll try to find a way to keep doing it.
Yeah. Okay. Are we wrapped up with this? Yes. All right. Thank you, Lori, for all your work. It really was helpful to kind of see that and see where the money has been spent. Thank you to you and your team for all the hard work and you guys are extra busy right now. It's good to get extra money, but it does mean you have to do extra work right now for it. So thank you.
Of course. My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. My device is going to sleep on me here. Okay, we are on to, so I just want to do a time check. We're at 10:12, so I'm hoping we can move through these last items fairly quickly. Why are you laughing, Mike?
I don't know.
Are you laughing because it's past your bedtime?
That's part of it.
Okay, we are on to item 8A. The review and action. We have one item, the discuss and vote Region 2012 Delegate Assembly. And Mike's on there, but I don't think Mike really needs to, unless you had something you wanted to share, Mike. So I think, right, so just as a quick reminder, this is the runoff. There are 3 candidates. We can choose up to 2. So I think maybe a quick discussion first of, do we want to do 2? Do we want to do what kind of Nancy had said, you know, the thought about last time, like, I assume we all very much support Bridget. Do we want to vote for 2? Do we want to vote just Bridget? So let's maybe have that quick discussion. If we just want to do 1, then we know our answer. If we want to do 2, then we can have a quick discussion of which 2.
I think we should do 2.
For 2? Okay. Okay. All right. So I'm assuming everyone wants Bridget as one of them, correct?
Yes.
That was cute, Bridget. All right. So then let's just have a quick discussion. So we've got the 2 others.
So Michelle, do you mind if I just say, like, I sent that spreadsheet and with the delegate assembly that talked, because last time we had that discussion about participation and representation. And I sent out that spreadsheet because for legislative action, we were trying to look at expanding that. And so we updated like where all the delegates were from. And I don't know if you want to screen share that and we could talk about it, or if you want me to, or if people just want to talk about the, you know, if that's not an issue.
If you just want to maybe like give a quick, like from you doing all, I mean, I glanced at it, but it was a little bit, right? I think there was a lot of stuff there. So, but you like know it really well. So just, if you maybe want to share with us from your perspective, based on looking at all that and that idea, I think we all do like that idea of representation from different places. What would be your thoughts based on you kind of looking at all of that when you put it together?
Well, I mean, what I can do is if I can share the screen, I can just show you this section that's just between those two candidates. So you could look at like where they are. Should I do that? Okay. So let me screen. Okay, that one is not, hang on. Okay. So, sure. Okay, so this screen is showing, this is this part right here is the runoff. And so basically, these are the existing delegates in this column N over here. So if this is all blue, this is who's representing, right? So for delegates, for delegate assembly and delegate directors. And so these people, you can see it's pretty much, they really try to get representation when they do appointments to kind of fill in. And this is how they're stacked right now. So geographically, they're all up and down the county. And if you look at district representation, like it's a little bit light on the west side, but in general, when you zoom in down to who's currently serving as a delegate, it's Lorena Chavez. She's from Eastside Union High School, which is where Von Lay is also. And then Andres Quintero is in Alum Rock School District, which feeds into that high school district, right? And so you can look and you can see how they line up with just their numbers. Their numbers are a little different, you know. Von Lay has a higher percentage of Asian Pacific Islanders in her district. And, you know, she has a, you know, 50% of her district is free and reduced lunch. Andres Quintero's district is got a higher needs population for free and reduced lunch. He has more Latinx.
Bridget, let me interrupt you fast. I forgot that we should do a motion first before we.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
No, it's not. I totally forgot about it. I was like thrown off from our study session tonight, so you're good. But let's do we now? I'm like totally public comment motion first. Public comment first. Public comment. All right. If there's anyone who wishes to speak on this item, please use the raise hand feature now. And that phone number is just Nancy, right?
Right.
Okay. All right. Motion, please. Bridget, you want to make a motion and then we can finish that discussion.
Sure. Okay. I move we discuss and vote for Region 20 12 delegate assembly.
Well, so you need to make a motion of who we're going to vote for.
Oh, I move that we vote.
We can change it, right? But just pick the two that you think right now, and we'll discuss it.
Sure. I'll move that we vote for me and for Von Lay.
All right. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay.
So I'd like to say why I think Von. I appreciate the demographics, but there's something else that we need to consider, and that's the opportunity for Vaughn to become more engaged in the API group within CSBA and do that important networking, and that would bring an additional asset to our county, because our delegates right now, if you look at, we don't have as many Asian Pacific Islander trustees that are engaged up at the state level.
Thanks.
Well, and I was just going to say that she's on, you know, the reason why I support her is that, you know, I've worked with her a little bit on Ledge Action, and she shows up. She shows up to the, you know, to the meetings. She shows up to, so she is working on Ledge Action, which is great. And, but, you know, that's a lot of the work that the delegates do, but it's just more at a local level. And so that would just be at the state level more. But I think she's someone who, you know, she comes to the CSBA meetings, and she usually has something to say. And I just know her better than I know Andres, but I haven't been in any meetings with him. And you know, he's super qualified. He's a really hard worker and he has a lot of community engagement, but you know, I've just worked with her recently, so
Thanks.
they're
Jeff?
both awesome.
Yeah. Jeff, Isabel, do either of you have any thoughts?
I was just kind of curious on if Bridget wanted to sum up what she was kind of displaying there. I didn't. What was your little thought going on that? Because I just wanted to kind of finish your thought on that.
Oh yeah, so I was just gonna say that, like, you know, they have, you know, if you were looking at demographics, if we were looking at anybody who was a little bit underrepresented, it would probably be the Asian Pacific Islander community more than the Latinx community as far as the delegate slate that we have right now. And so, like, if that's what we wanted to vote on, I mean, we could do that. So either way, I think I'm just very grateful that you're voting for me. So
Thanks for that additional information, though. I appreciate it.
But
Very well thought out.
Yeah, and we pulled it together because we were also looking at just leadership opportunities in general in the county. You know, like, how is that shaking out, and how are people participating and representing at a lot of different levels, whether it's a personal level or a district level. Like, for example, let me just share that one more speedy quick time. You know, so the Luther Burbank School District, like we were talking about within CSBA, right? Like, who are the officers for this year? And this year, the officers were George Sanchez, who's also going to continue as a delegate. Rosa Kim she's from Fremont Union High School District, right? So she was the treasurer, and Fiona Walter. Well, next, usually the vice president becomes the president the next year, right? And so George stepped back because of a family thing. And so Fiona stayed on. They put me on the slate, they nominated me. And so I'm going to be there. And our district is like 30% Latinx, Hispanic, about 30% free and reduced lunch, and about 30%, not heritage speakers of English, and about 30% Asian Pacific Islander. Like, we're pretty even. So even though I'm a nice white lady, like my district is very like balanced in a way, right? And then but people at that meeting in particular, like, kind of had a reaction because who shows up as treasurer is Vince, right? And I can't remember his last name, but he's the new treasurer, right? And so there's this like reaction because he's, he looks just like this white guy sitting there. So all of a sudden, like, people are like, whoa, what's going on with our organization? But if you look at the district that he's representing and the people he serves, it's 91% Latinx Hispanic, 83% free and reduced lunch, 61% of English language learners. Like, so this is a district that, and it's super tiny. It's like really, it's like one school, right? 500 kids at this school. So it's just this like very, very unique district that hasn't been hasn't been participating at that level at all. Plus he's the treasurer and he's good with money. So yay. So anyway, I just think that, there are who we are as people, and it's the districts that we represent. And then it's our wanting to participate and, for the organization. And I think that Andres has been doing it for a long time. And Von Lay has been really active this year. And I haven't seen Andres around that much, so maybe this is her year. So that's just kind of that's just kind of how this data was shaking out. And we did it for the purposes of like trying to see how we were representing and how our districts kind of shook out on ledge action as far as like how we were doing to represent the whole county. So that's why we put this together. And these are numbers are a little off because they're the last numbers that we had from the state, which was like 2020.
Thanks.
2019. Okay, that's it. I'll stop sharing.
Isabel, do you have anything you want to add before we vote? Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. We're ready to vote. Yes. All right.
Yeah.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Chair votes aye, and with that, the motion passes. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for your work and help with that, Bridget. All right, we are now on to consent agenda. If there's any public who wishes to speak on consent agenda, please use the raise hand feature now. And not seeing any. Board, is there a motion?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Board, is there any comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Chair votes aye, and with that, the motion. I want to do a time check. So we have on here the review and discussion for discuss the board office hours, which they did is kind of a little bit of a short summary of how the last one was and moving forward. Do we want to have that discussion right now, or it's 10:30? We've been at this for 4 hours. Do we want to have that discussion another time?
I would like another time.
Do we just need to decide who's doing the next one and then they can?
We already
it's been decided.
Yeah, we already have that. So the meeting on the 29th will be Jeff and I. And then for the next one, because the timing, right? So then we'll try to do a timing that will work. So Isabel can do the last one that we'll have this year. So yeah, so that's all good. So I think unless there was anything super critical, we can kind of have this discussion about board office hours at a later time. Yeah. So I don't know the logistics of how Jeff or Nancy or Jesus, what is the logistics of, since we're tabling this, how do we have to do that?
You can have a motion to table.
Thank you.
Move to table discussion on office hours.
Is there a second?
Second.
In public, is there any comments? Board, do you have any comments on that? All right, looks like we have one public comment. Aaliyah, if you could help us with that.
Yes. DEO.
Just want to say this office hours thing you're doing, great idea. Thank you for doing it. Even though it's kind of hard, quite a lot of logistics to organize.
Thank you.
All right, board, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and without the motion passes, so we'll discuss it later. And thank you, David, for your comment. Okay, we are on to 11 future meetings and the adjournment. So our next meeting is Thursday, May 6th at 7 p.m. That's a regular meeting. And then just the reminders of the community forum on May 4th and board office hours, but information will also be included in the weekly emails for people. And I'm just going to do a quick reminder. We still have time. We'll remind again, but board May 13th is our closed session for superintendent evaluation. So if you haven't done it yet, that's totally fine. I haven't done mine yet, but just the reminder of in the next few weeks to work on the evaluation. And with that, I adjourn our meeting at 10:30. Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Good night. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, interpreters. Thank you, Desmond. Thank you, Monica.